The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was a place of calculated diplomacy, sprawling holographic displays, and the quiet hum of advanced technology. It was a place where empires dictated the fates of lesser species with a flick of the wrist, where war was waged with the cold efficiency of numbers on a datapad. Tonight, however, it was filled with something far less sophisticated: laughter. Holographic projections flickered in the center of the chamber, displaying Earth's military arsenal. Rows of human soldiers training with rifles, snipers lying in the dirt adjusting their scopes, artillery pieces roaring in controlled blasts. It was a spectacle that, to the assembled representatives of the Dominion, was nothing short of comical. A sleek, violet-skinned Zelvery ambassador, High Chancellor Gyrek, smirked as he leaned forward. His piercing crimson eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "Tell me, General Korvac," he said, directing his attention toward the towering warlord of the K-Vote Dominion. "Is this truly the extent of human warfare?" Korvac, a reptilian brute with thick, armored scales, let out a guttural chuckle. He gestured toward the images with one clawed hand. Their firearms propelled tiny chunks of metal using chemical explosions. Chemical explosions. Do they hope to tickle us to death? The chamber roared with agreement. A deep, grating voice rumbled through the room as a towering, eight-limbed Zulrath warrior, whose kind were infamous for their ruthless planetary conquests, bared his fanged maw in amusement. "I failed to see how such primitive tools could even scratch our battle armor. Our shields are calibrated to deflect energy-based weapons. But these, what do humans call them? Bullets." He spat the word like a curse. "These bullets are nothing but relics of an uncivilized era." More laughter erupted. Some representatives thumped their fists against the stone table, others clicked their mandibles in amusement. It was a universal mockery, a dismissal of the very idea that humanity could be a threat. A lone figure stood among them, silent, watching the holograms with a measured gaze. Lord Admiral Vowell of the KRYNN Dominion, a veteran of dozens of galactic conflicts, did not laugh. Unlike the others, he had seen what arrogance could do to an empire. He had seen how underestimating an enemy could turn the tides of war. "Perhaps we should consider this more carefully," Varel said, his voice cutting through the laughter like a well-placed blade. "We have never engaged humans directly in war. What if there is more to them than we realize?" Chancellor Gyrek rolled his eyes, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, come now, Admiral. These creatures barely have interstellar travel. Their most advanced warships are sluggish, armed with, what did our intelligence report say, cannons." He scoffed. "We have plasma arrays that can melt hulls from light years away. What could their outdated technology possibly accomplish against us?" "Perhaps we should test them first," Varel suggested, his expression unreadable. "A direct assault might be premature." Korvac slammed his fist onto the table, shaking the entire structure. "No. We are the Dominion. We do not test. We conquer. And Earth will be no different." The council chamber erupted in agreement. The decision was made. Within hours, war fleets were mobilized. The Galactic Dominion's invasion force was set on course for Earth, a mere speck in the vastness of space, an insignificant rock that would soon become another footnote in the Dominion's endless conquests. Meanwhile, on Earth, far from the polished halls of the Galactic Council, deep in the untamed wilderness of a distant mountain range, a lone figure lay still, perfectly blended into the terrain. He had been there for hours, unmoving, barely even breathing. His rifle, an extension of his body, rested steadily against his shoulder. The barrel was wrapped in a specially crafted mesh to eliminate any reflection. His camouflage suit matched the earth around him, rendering him nearly invisible. Even the birds did not recognize him as something out of place. He was watching the skies. A soft vibration in his earpiece brought a smirk to his lips. "This is HQ. We've got confirmed movement. Dominion warships entering high orbit. Looks like they are coming in hard and fast. You got eyes?" The sniper shifted slightly, adjusting his scope. The enhanced optics locked onto the barely visible streaks in the night sky, massive warships descending through the atmosphere, their hulls reflecting the moonlight like ominous shadows. "Oh yeah," he whispered. "I see them." He adjusted a dial, zooming in. Hundreds of smaller craft were detaching from the warships, descending toward the cities, the military installations, toward Earth's defenders. The aliens were wasting no time. They expected surrender. The sniper chuckled under his breath. Fools. With a slow, deliberate motion, he reached down to the pouch on his vest, retrieving a single round. He examined it under the dim light of the stars. 7.62 millimeters standard issue. Nothing fancy. No plasma, no energy-based nonsense. Just pure, simple physics. And yet, he had seen what this round could do. He had watched it end lives from miles away. He had felt the weight of it in his hands before making a shot that changed the course of battle. Primitive? Maybe. But effective. He loaded the round with the care of a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. The earpiece crackled again. Orders are clear. Hold position. Pick your targets carefully. The moment they step on our soil, make them regret it. The sniper exhaled slowly, steadying his heartbeat. His finger brushed against the trigger. Copy that, he murmured. His scope locked onto the first target. A Zelvery commander, standing tall on the battlefield, barking orders at his troops. His shield shimmered around him, impenetrable against plasma fire. But not against this. The sniper smiled. This is gonna be fun. He exhaled, a single breath vanishing into the cold night air. Then, he pulled the trigger. Crack. A sound that would haunt the galactic dominion for years to come. A shot that changed the course of history. The shot rang out like thunder splitting the sky. Even in the vast chaos of an interstellar invasion, even beneath the mechanical hum of warships and the screeching wind of atmospheric entry, everyone heard it. A single crack. A single, sharp explosion of sound that carried through the air before the war had even begun. The Zelvery commander on the battlefield stood tall, his deep purple skin glistening under the soft glow of his personal shield. He was barking orders, his mandibles clicking as he coordinated troop movements. In his mind, the humans were already beaten. The Dominion had landed without resistance. Their warships hovered over Earth's major cities, plasma cannons primed. Ground forces fanned out, establishing control before the inevitable surrender. But then, the shot. The Zelvery commander jerked violently, his body going rigid. A red mist exploded from the back of his skull. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, as if his body had yet to comprehend it was dead. Then, slowly, he crumpled. Silence. For a second, nobody moved. The elite Zelvery guards surrounding him turned sharply, scanning in all directions. Their helmet optics flickered through multiple spectrums, thermal, electromagnetic, motion tracking. Nothing. The troops waiting for commands hesitated, uncertainty creeping in. Then, another shot. Crack. A second officer dropped, a fist-size hole blown clean through his skull. Panic surged through the ranks. Soldiers scrambled for cover, their once disciplined formations breaking into scattered clusters. Some activated their energy shields, others switched to thermal vision, but no amount of technology could help them. Because their enemy was nowhere to be seen. The ghost in the mountains. 2 miles away, high in the rugged mountains, the sniper shifted position. His ghillie suit, woven with real vegetation, made him one with the earth. He crawled with calculated slowness, keeping his rifle steady as he adjusted his line of sight. His scope locked onto another Zelvery officer. This one was barking into a communication device, trying to re-establish order. The sniper could see the tension in his mandibles, the way his forefingers trembled slightly on the controls. A deep inhale. A slow, measured exhale. Crack. The alien's head snapped back, his body crumpling into the dirt. The sniper grinned, reloading smoothly. They had no idea where he was. This wasn't some close-quarters firefight, where alien energy shields could block incoming fire. This was a war of patience, precision, and terror. The sniper whispered into his radio. 3 down. How are they reacting? A voice crackled back. They are confused. They don't understand what's happening. Keep them that way. The sniper smirked. With pleasure. The fear spreads. On the battlefield, the remaining Zelvery officers shouted desperate orders. Deploy the Seekers. Sleek, black drones shot into the sky, scanning the terrain with advanced optics. These were the Dominion's finest reconnaissance tools, capable of detecting the slightest movement, the most subtle heat signatures. They hovered over the mountain range, sweeping in methodical patterns. The sniper saw them coming. He didn't panic. He adapted. He pulled a thermal blanket over his body, eliminating his heat signature. Then, moving inch by inch, he slid backward into the natural crevice of a rock formation. His heart rate remained steady. His breath came slow and quiet. The drones passed overhead. They detected nothing. But then, crack. One of the seekers jerked violently as a bullet tore through its optical sensor. It spiraled out of control, crashing into the dirt below. The remaining drones adjusted, recalibrating, scanning the source of the shot. Crack. A second seeker exploded mid-air. The last drone tried to escape, zigzagging erratically, searching for the shooter. Crack. It crashed, its metal shell bursting into pieces. Now the aliens were truly blind. On the battlefield, soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. Their knuckles turned pale. The Dominion forces had fought countless species across the galaxy, but never had they encountered an enemy who killed from beyond sight. Their greatest advantage, technology, was useless. And something far worse than defeat was setting in. Fear. The Council watches in horror. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the battle was being broadcast in real time. What was supposed to be a glorious display of superiority had turned into a disaster. The representatives leaned forward, watching the holograms in stunned silence. One Zelvery senator whispered, "How are they doing this?" The once smug High Chancellor Gyrek's face darkened. His claws tightened against the armrest of his chair. This is a fluke. A rogue fighter. One anomaly means nothing. But Admiral Varel saw the truth. He watched as an entire platoon of Dominion troops huddled behind cover, too afraid to move. He understood something the others refused to see. This wasn't just one man with a rifle. This was a hunter. And the Dominion had just stepped into his territory. The massacre begins. On the ground, the sniper's radio crackled. More reinforcements inbound. Transports moving in from the south. Want to give them a warm welcome. The sniper adjusted his scope, scanning the incoming dropships. They were sleek, well-armored, but vulnerable. He smirked. Copy that. He lined up his shot, exhaled. Crack. The round pierced through the cockpit of the leading dropship. The pilot's skull exploded, painting the interior in green blood. The craft wobbled, lost control, and crashed directly into the second transport. The explosion sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The surviving Dominion troops stared in disbelief. Their warships were still intact. Their numbers still overwhelming. But it didn't matter. Because somewhere out there, unseen, was a single human. And he was killing them one by one. The whisper that broke them. As the Dominion forces scrambled for cover, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Then, through the static of their comm channels, a voice broke through. Run. The Zelvery officers stiffened. The voice was cold, measured, mocking. You think I'm alone, the sniper whispered. You think I'm the only one watching. It was a lie, of course. But the Zelvery didn't know that. They had no idea how many snipers were out there. How many unseen enemies were watching them. A ripple of doubt, of pure terror, ran through the ranks. And then, before the officer could reply, crack, his body slumped. And the last thing the remaining soldiers heard before they broke ranks and ran was laughter. The Galactic Dominion had never faced a ghost before, but they would remember this day forever. And it was only the beginning. The Dominion had fought thousands of wars. They had crushed entire species under their boots, burned civilizations to the ground, and rewritten history with fire and blood. But never had they encountered something like this. Never had they fought an enemy that killed from the shadows, an enemy that they could not see, an enemy that turned the very air around them into a weapon. The humans weren't using plasma cannons or orbital bombardments. They weren't deploying massive armies or launching overwhelming invasions. They were patient. They were precise. And they were hunting. The survivors speak in whispers. The few Dominion troops who managed to crawl away from the massacre were trembling as they transmitted reports back to High Command. "We don't know where they are," one soldier stammered, blood dripping from a gash across his face. His mandibles twitched uncontrollably. "We don't know where the shots are coming from. We're dying one by one, and we..." Crack. His head snapped back as a round tore through his skull. The communication feed cut out instantly. Across the Dominion fleet, officers exchanged uneasy glances. "They are ghosts," another survivor whispered over comms. "They are everywhere and nowhere. The moment we stop moving, someone dies." The commander in charge of planetary operations snarled. "Get it together," he barked. "We are the Dominion. Deploy countermeasures. Use the Seekers. Call in air support." They already tried. A grim silence followed. The Zelvery commander's throat tightened. "What?" The survivor took a shaky breath. They already sent the drones. They were destroyed. The pilots never even saw it coming. The Dominion officers had no words, because this had never happened before. They had faced enemies who fought desperately, who resisted with all their might. But humans weren't resisting. They were playing a game where the Dominion was prey. The second wave arrives. Determined to crush this invisible threat, the Dominion dispatched a second wave of reinforcements. Hundreds of elite commandos, trained in urban and guerrilla warfare, dropped onto the battlefield in shimmering black armor. These were the Dominion's most ruthless killers, bred for war and conquest. They fanned out, moving in small units, their helmets scanning the terrain with advanced sensors. The first squad moved cautiously, covering each other's angles. Their armor shimmered with active camouflage, blending into the environment. They crept through the wreckage of the battlefield, their rifles raised, their claws tense against the triggers. Then, crack! A single shot. One of them jerked violently, his chest plate exploding inwards. He hit the ground with a dull thud. The others froze. They scanned in every direction. Their sensors detected nothing. "Where is he?" one of them barked. A bead of sweat dripped down another soldier's forehead. We don't." Crack. Another soldier dropped. A headshot. Through the visor. The squad panicked, firing wildly, their plasma bolts scorching the air. But they were shooting at nothing. The remaining 5 soldiers pressed their backs against a ruined transport. Their captain tried to speak, his voice shaking. "Hold position. We need to." Crack. His body slumped, his words silenced forever. The last 4 soldiers ran. Terror spreads. The surviving commandos stumbled into a forward operating base, their armor scorched and their breathing ragged. The Zelvery officers turned in shock. "What happened? Where's your squad?" The lead commando ripped off his helmet, his eyes wide, pupils dilated in terror. His mandibles twitched, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look like a soldier. He looked hunted. His not human, the commando whispered. His something else. Something was. The officer scoffed. "You're telling me one man did this?" The commando swallowed hard. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "He's not alone." The officer froze. For the first time, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. The humans weren't fighting the way the Dominion expected. They weren't meeting them head-on. They were turning the battlefield into a graveyard. And the worst part? Nobody knew how many of them were out there. The Council watches in horror. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the live broadcast showed the remains of Dominion forces scattering like frightened insects. Representatives from 100 worlds stared in stunned silence. This was supposed to be an easy war, a quick display of power. But now, a different realization crept into their bones. One of the council members whispered the question everyone was thinking. If humans are this deadly when outnumbered, what happens if they fight us at full strength? No one answered, because no one wanted to know the answer. The hunt continues. Back on the battlefield, the sniper adjusted his scope. Through the lens, he saw a Dominion officer cowering behind cover, desperately calling for help. The sniper smirked. He whispered into his radio. "They are breaking." A second voice responded, just as cold. "Then let's make it wise." A second shot rang out. The officer collapsed, his body twitching. More shots followed. More bodies fell. And somewhere in the distance, a whispered message crackled over an open Dominion frequency. A message that sent chills down the spines of every soldier who heard it. "You were warned. Now run." The remaining Dominion forces didn't hesitate. They ran. The most powerful army in the galaxy was now fleeing. And the hunt had only just begun. The sniper had a new mission. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Dominion had conquered over 1,000 worlds. They had crushed species that resisted, rewriting history in their own image. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was a hunt. And they were the prey. The massacre at Outpost Theta. The Dominion had established Outpost Theta as a fallback point, a heavily fortified compound with energy shields, automated defenses, and some of the best warriors the Dominion had to offer. It was supposed to be impenetrable. They were wrong. The sniper watched from 3 kilometers away, lying prone in the thick underbrush. His ghillie suit blended seamlessly into the terrain, making him nearly invisible to any scanners. Through his scope, he counted his targets. 70 soldiers. 8 officers. 2 generals. His lips curled into a cold smirk. He whispered into his comms. Targets acquired. Time to send a message. His finger tightened on the trigger. Crack. The first shot pierced through a Dominion officer's helmet. He collapsed without a sound, his body twitching in the dirt. The base erupted into chaos. The sniper didn't stop. Crack. Another soldier dropped, his chest armor shattered. Crack. A third. Through the throat. Screams filled the outpost. Soldiers dove for cover, scrambling behind barriers. The base commander's voice boomed over comms. Find him. Find the human. The sniper watched them scramble, desperate, blind, terrified. He switched positions without a sound, slithering through the brush like a phantom. The Dominion's greatest warriors were supposed to be fearless. But now, they were praying they wouldn't be next. The counterattack fails. Determined to stop the sniper, the Dominion deployed Seekers, small, hovering drones designed to detect life signs, heat signatures, and movement. They spread out, scanning the area in all directions. The sniper watched them approach, calm and patient. He waited. Then, he fired. Crack. The first drone shattered in a shower of sparks. Crack. The second exploded. The Dominion forces recoiled in shock. His taking out the Seekers. Impossible. How is he? Crack. A Dominion sergeant fell to the ground, his skull bursting apart like an overripe fruit. The remaining soldiers started to panic. They weren't fighting an enemy. They were being hunted by a ghost. The psychological war. The sniper wasn't just killing them. He was breaking them. He played games with them. He took out one radio operator, leaving the others scrambling to communicate. He disabled generators, plunging entire sections of the base into darkness. He destroyed water reserves, forcing them to ration supplies. Hours passed. Fear spread like a virus. Soldiers twitched at every sound. They stopped talking. They stopped moving. The sniper waited until they thought they were safe. Then, in the dead of night, he whispered over an open Dominion frequency. You were warned. A pause. Then, another whisper. Now run. The Dominion soldiers snapped. Some threw down their weapons and ran into the jungle. Others screamed at the darkness, firing their rifles wildly at nothing. The officers tried to restore order, but it was too late. The Dominion had broken. The Great Retreat. By morning, Outpost Theta was abandoned. The once proud soldiers of the Dominion had fled, leaving behind their weapons, their supplies, and even their dead. The sniper moved in, stepping over discarded rifles and half-eaten rations. He knelt by a fallen officer, taking his insignia as a trophy. Then, he activated his radio. Objective complete. Outpost Theta is ours. A voice on the other end responded, cold and precise. Good work. Proceed to the next target. The sniper smirked. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Galactic Council panics. News of the massacre reached the Galactic Council within hours. The footage of Dominion forces running in terror spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time, the Council realized the truth. The humans weren't weak. They weren't primitive. They were monsters. One of the Council members spoke in a hushed, fearful tone. We have to stop this, before it's too late. But deep down, they all knew the truth. It was already too late. The Galactic Council had always believed in their superiority. For centuries, they had mocked humanity, dismissing them as weak, primitive, and insignificant. But now, they were terrified. The massacre at Outpost Theta had been a warning. The sniper was still out there, and he was coming for them next. The final stand at Command Fortress Zephyrian. The Dominion's last major stronghold in the sector was Fortress Zephyrian, a massive military base protected by energy shields, orbital defense platforms, and thousands of elite warriors. It was a fortress meant to withstand planetary invasions. But it wouldn't withstand him. The sniper had already infiltrated the perimeter. For 3 days, he watched, studied, and planned. Then, he struck. The sniper's opening move. It began with a single, perfect shot. Crack. A Dominion officer's head snapped back as his body crumpled from the wall. Seconds later, boom. An explosion ripped through one of the supply depots, engulfing the east wing in flames. The base erupted in alarms. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions. The commander's voice rang out over the comms. "We are under attack. All forces, mobilize." But the sniper was already gone. He had vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only bodies and smoke. The mind games begin. The sniper never stopped moving. Every time they thought they had his location, he was already somewhere else. He disabled communications, severing their ability to coordinate. He destroyed power generators, plunging entire sections of the fortress into blackness. He poisoned their water supply, forcing them to ration resources. By the second night, half the soldiers hadn't slept. Their hands trembled as they gripped their weapons. Their commanders screamed orders, but it didn't matter. He was inside their heads now. The fall of the shield generator. The fortress's last true defense was its energy shield, a barrier strong enough to withstand orbital bombardment. If it fell, the entire base would be exposed. The Dominion had stationed a full battalion to defend it. But no army can stop what it can't see. Crack. The first guard dropped, his helmet punctured by a high-caliber round. Before the others could react, boom. A planted explosive detonated, tearing through the shield generator's main coolant lines. The entire facility shook. Panic spread like wildfire. Engineers scrambled to repair the damage. Crack. The sniper took out the lead engineer. Crack. The next. Crack. A third. Within minutes, the shield failed. The fortress was exposed. And the Dominion knew what was coming. The final push. With the shields down, the sniper's allies struck. Human drop pods slammed into the base, releasing elite special forces, ruthless, silent killers armed with weapons the Dominion had never seen before. The battle was swift, precise, merciless. Dominion warriors tried to fight, but they were outmatched, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. By dawn, the fortress was a graveyard. Blood soaked the floors. Dominion officers begged for mercy. None was given. The sniper walked through the ruins, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He reached the final chamber, the control room, where the remaining Dominion warlords had gathered in desperation. One of them, shaking, whispered in terror, "What are you?" The sniper stared at him. Then he raised his weapon. Crack. Darkness. The message to the Galactic Council. News of the fortress's fall spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. They had mocked humanity. They had laughed at their primitive weapons. But now, their most feared soldiers were dead. Their strongest bases were gone. And worst of all, they still didn't know who the sniper was, or where he would strike next. A single message arrived at the council's chamber. A video. They played it. It showed a lone human sniper, standing over the bodies of Dominion warlords. His voice was calm, emotionless. "You wanted war." A pause. Then, "We are war." The screen cut to black. Silence filled the chamber. Then, a council member, his voice shaking, whispered, "We have to surrender." But it was too late. The sniper was already watching.